That Atlanta Falcons radio show. So get up, get out, and get something. Get in the zone. We live in the DT. Tune in, cause we about to blow like TNT. Falcons Central Radio Show. Gonna be berserk, y'all heard. We ain't even tripping. Catching y'all slipping. What's good, man? On the 415 Central Radio Network, hosted by Aaron Freeman and Scott Car Ass Sick. What? This right here is a good present for you and for my presence like I was Santa Claus, man. How you doing?
All right. We are back for another Falcons Central Radio show on Pro Football Central Radio Network, live on Google. Today, I'm Aaron Freeman, joined by Scott Karasik. Today, sorry about that, our producer was making faces. But today we're going to talk about Falcons minicamp. You can look at Scott's face and tell that he's been out in the sun today. That's because he was at minicamp today. So we will get to talk about that. And we'll also talk about the Falcons offensive line and our positional breakdown that we do every week. And then we'll get to you guys' mailbag questions at the end. So, Scott, I'm going to give it to you since you were able to eyeball the Falcons today. So, talk about what you saw, what you liked, what you didn't like, whatever.
First 2-3 kind of noticeable things were Roddy White, Julio Jones, OC, were all sitting out, just not even involved in the practicing today. They were all kind of acting more like coaches. Like, yeah, Roddy White was there. He was pretty much sitting out. He was acting like the assistant wide receivers coach, which was fun to see. Yes, I know I needed sunscreen. But yeah, he was acting like the quarterback for the wide receivers for most of the day, and it was fun to watch. There's a couple guys who really stood out, and there's a couple guys who I was kind of like, I really need to see a lot more from. Otherwise, I don't think they're making the roster this year. The two guys that just absolutely stood out that I was very shocked at was Freddie Martino with the threes and Bernard Reedy. Bernard Reedy got some playing time with the ones and was burning guys deep, looking really good. So I thought that was very good for him to do. The other guy that really stood out, and I'm sure you've seen everybody else saying this, is Robert Alford.
Yep.
He looked great last year in practices. He looks way better this year than he did last year. So, he's got great technique. I just want to see him against real NFL wide receivers and not practicing. Like, I know we've got real NFL wide receivers, but they were sitting on the sidelines chilling for most of the day. And then Devin Hester looked good, but they didn't really do much special teams stuff. And Tyler Starr will make the roster because of special teams this year. He just knew what to do. Very few guys just understand what they're supposed to do on special teams. And he did. So I think he's going to make the roster. I think he's going to be one of those guys that, unlike Lawrence Sidbury, who couldn't figure it out on special teams, he'll make the roster for it, and he'll turn into one of the better special teams guys right now while he develops as a pass rusher. As a pass rusher, he was getting owned by Ryan Schrader all day. And it was kind of funny to watch because you're like, man, this guy just doesn't know what to do yet. Beating him off the snap, not beating him with his hands. So, work in progress. But good special teamer, so he'll be useful there.
Okay.
The guys that really need to improve, otherwise they're gone, our boy Darius Johnson. Still a disaster on special teams.
Okay.
Still, I hate to say it, I don't know what he does that Bernard Reedy doesn't do better. And I like Darius Johnson, but everything I saw today said Bernard Reedy is the 6th wide receiver unless they give it to Geraldo Boldevine, who, again, he stood out because he just didn't catch a single, or he didn't drop a single pass.
Okay.
He didn't drop a single catch. Like, every single time the ball was thrown to him, he made a catch of some sort. It was either a ridiculous, like, one-handed grab, great extension, or he had the standard Brian Finneran catch with your fingertips right in front of you kind of catch. The textbook, hey, this is how to catch a football with your fingertips. Use all your hand and pull it in. And he's very good at that. So we got Brian Finneran Part 2 and Geraldo Boldevine, or you've got good old, what Harry Douglas could be in Bernard Reedy. I know how you said you wanted that outside deep threat.
Mm-hmm.
Reedy was lining up on the right outside. They were putting Douglas in the slot, and they were putting Hester on the other side. And they were running 4 verticals with Toilolo over the middle.
Okay.
Toilolo was looking good over the middle. They were hitting Reedy deep. They were hitting Hester deep. Hester has a role in the offense. There's a lot of great things to see there. Now, the other guy who's probably losing his job, I will say this, I was wrong about Stanley Mapanga going in to camp because he's just, whatever switch he needed to flip, he flipped. Because he went from, like, I don't know if he needs to see the field to, he should at least get a shot at the roster. He'll probably make the roster. He'll probably rotate in a lot. And he might be a 4 to 5 sack guy this year. He was playing with the 2s on the strong side, and he held his own against the run. They weren't allowed to tackle, though. That drives me crazy. I wanted to see some hitting today, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
But no, Mopanga, he stood out a little bit, too. But I do think that if OC doesn't get it together, I don't know.
So you put OC on your gotta improve list.
I'd put OC on there on just to get out there and something, because I don't know if he's. I don't know what he's gonna. I don't know where his role is this year. Because they were having Massacre play with both the ones and the 2s. They were having Bierman play with the 1s, and then it was just frustrating.
Okay. Well, you just gave us some names that stood out and some names that, need to step their game up. And you talked a little bit about the wide receivers. And just to play devil's advocate here, are we falling into the trap of putting a little too much stock in minicamp as opposed to, when it really matters in training camp?
I feel like we need to see him play a game, but I feel like Bernard Reedy's earned a shot in the games at least. I feel like he's at least, hey, playing with the 1s a little bit during preseason if you can't get Julio out there. Let Bernard have a shot. Let Drew Davis have a shot. Davis looks solid. A lot of these guys are going to look good in minicamp. The one guy who looked really good out there is your boy Lowry, too. He tipped 4 or 5 passes.
Swim on that bandwagon for you, Scott. Jump aboard.
So, it's never been his play on the field. It's been the issue of get him healthy and don't have a concussion case.
Okay, that's true.
But anyway, let's go into the other topics for the night. We've got another one of offensive line analysis. At tackle, guard, and center.
So, did you see anything in minicamp today that kind of sway your opinion on this, or?
Well, the starting offensive line in minicamp is normally what it is during the season, what I've noticed. And it was Baker at left, Blaylock at left guard, Hawley at center, Asamoah at right guard, and Matthews at right tackle. That wasn't going to change, though.
Yeah.
The second team is what surprised me, because Khans was center, for sure. Karimi was right guard. Gunn was left. Holmes was left. And then Mike Johnson was right tackle. So that was weird to see. And then the third team, Gunn played also with the third team, with Stone and Replogle, which I messed up completely, I know, and Schrader. So the depth chart is kind of what we assumed it was going to be.
What about Taron Jones?
He was on the third squad at left tackle.
Okay.
But Mike Johnson played a little bit of center.
Okay. They have worked him there before. I know I think it was when Holly got suspended, like 2 years ago, he got some snaps in practice at center. So that certainly will help his chances of making the roster because pretty much we know the 5 starters are locked in.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's really going to be 4 or 5 other jobs that everybody else is competing for. And basically the best chance you have to make one of those spots is being able to play multiple positions. Because if you can play multiple positions, that means you're going to be active on Sunday because pretty much every NFL team only activates 7 offensive linemen each week. The 5 starters, you have a swing tackle, and then you have a swing guard that can also usually play center. And if Johnson can add center to his repertoire, because we know Khans can play center, we know Gunn can play center, obviously James Stone's a center. If Johnson's can also play center, then he can really put some pressure on Khans to be that swing guard. And, it's probably going to be Holmes, Johnson, Schrader, and maybe Karimi in the mix for the swing tackle. But I think probably Holmes is probably going to win that job.
I think Holmes has that job locked up because he's the backup left tackle for sure. They never flipped Baker and Matthews. They never even gave it a thought, which I understand, let Matthews for a year play right tackle. But if at one point Baker does go down, you might still see Holmes at left tackle. As weird as that sounds and as bad as some people are cringing right now, you might just see it happen. And it might not be that horrible because the way Asamoah was pass blocking out there was ridiculous. You had Asamoah on one guy, you had Matthews on another guy, you had Hawley locking up a guy with Blaylock just fine, and sometimes Blaylock was just punching and then helping out the left tackle. So you're really protecting the quarterback this year. Matt Ryan had time to throw, and he was going deep. Stuff that you've wanted to see, Aaron.
Yes, very much.
Matt Ryan threw 4 deep passes today on like 30 plays.
It's 4 more than he threw all last year.
He threw like 8 last year on the season.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like 25, 30-yard passes. I'm saying like drop back from the 30, launched it, got it to about the other side 20, and then Bernard Reed was blink. So, biggest question, who are the starters? We know who they are. Baker, Blaylock, Khans, Asamoah, Matthews. Who are the, will Asamoah and Matthews make that much of a difference? Yes. If Stan Baker can't stay healthy, is that going to kill the team this year? Not in the slightest. The offensive line will look closer to what it was in 2010 than it did in 2013 if Baker gets injured this year. If Baker goes down, do you freak out? No. Those are the big questions we needed to have answered. You don't freak out. You don't get scared. You're not worried about the stupid things that Lamar Holmes is going to do as essentially a rookie at the position. He's had over 1,000 snaps at the spot. Some people just look awful in their first 1,000 snaps.
Yes.
And,
Dwayne Brown can attest to that.
and speaking of which, Joplin Bartu and Paul Warlow, from our favorite position, the linebackers.
We talk about it every week.
Talk about it every week because we love them. They looked good. They easily are going to be the starters on the inside. Dent and Shembo were the second grouping out there, and then it was Sproul and Smallwood.
Sounds about right.
I don't know if they keep Dent. Because the difference between Dent and Smallwood was a lot smaller than you'd think it'd be for Dent being the fourth-year professional.
That's fair. I wouldn't disagree with that, but I think just because now that they had lost Weatherspoon, and unless they sign somebody, which we could talk about a little bit later, but it's going to be hard to go into a season with zero experience behind your linebackers. And I think that's probably going to save Dent's job, even if he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, and that's where I think Smallwood gets cut out of any of those guys. And I think Brandon Daly gets cut, and I think Jacquez Smith gets cut. But I do think they keep 10 linebackers this year because the main guys they were using on special teams were their linebackers. The third-team defensive line was in there quite a bit of Cliff Matthews, Travian Robertson, and Paray Jerry. And it was bad. Like, it was, let's put it this way, it's what you would expect a third-string defensive line of Travian Robertson, Cliff Matthews, and Paray Jerry to look like.
Okay.
Goodman out there looked awesome. Malachi Goodman. He looked great. He was eating double teams all day. So, sorry. I was enjoying minicamp. It was fun.
Well, let me swing it back to the offensive line stats. So, okay. We know the 5 starters. I think we can safely say Holmes is a lock. He's going to make. I think they haven't given up on Peter Kahns. I think he's a lock, even though we can argue whether he should be. But I think they're not going to cut a second-round pick 3 years into his career.
No, they're not.
So if the Falcons keep 9 offensive linemen, who do you think are the top 2 guys to take those last 2 spots?
I think it's going to be Mike Johnson, and I think it's going to be Gabe Karimi. And if it's not Karimi, it's going to be Schrader. I don't see any way that Gunn, Stone, or Jones make the final roster this year. Love all 3 of them as players, but none of them are going to be starters this year. None of them are going to make the roster this year. They seem like good enough guys too, but I don't see them making the roster. Because the talent level is just not there. Like it is for everybody else, it's not there. Schrader is on the same level as Karimi right now. I think Mike Johnson's got a spot no matter what. Unless he gets hurt, Johnson's got a spot.
Okay. See, I'm gonna go with Johnson and Schrader. I think Schrader is another guy that we could be talking about this a couple of years down the road, but it wouldn't shock me if 2 or 3 years down the road, Schrader is the other starter as opposed to Lamar Holmes opposite Jake Matthews. I think he has that sort of upside, and if Holmes doesn't take that next step, which we both believe that he's capable of doing, but if he doesn't take that next step, you have another nice developmental player in Schrader who can also play both left and right tackle. He's that 6'7" guy. He's only played football a couple of years. He's kind of raw, but getting a coach like Mike Tyson there that can really mold him, I think it would be a positive step for him this year.
Well, they were putting some packages out there where Holmes was playing. They're putting in Mike Johnson, but Holmes was playing in there as left guard on some packages. So it looked good. It did look good to see Holmes out there. Um, sorry, it did look good to see Holmes out there. The sun has been beating on my face all day, so my head is kind of fried. It did look good seeing Holmes out there, playing a little bit left guard, but I don't know if it was really him, because you're so far away from the field, that it could have been Mike Johnson playing left guard, and they were putting Blaylock at tackle, and Baker was outside. So they weren't having guys completely outside with their sixth tackle. That or it was just a really weird-looking formation. But Hawley looked really good. Hawley should start. For the biggest reason that his shotgun snaps are that much quicker than Kans's. He's got pop to it. There's a spiral that you see forming on Hawley's shotgun snaps. It's like he's throwing it upside down to Matt Ryan. Khan's, on the other hand, it's like a duck.
Okay. I'll keep it in mind here when shotgun snaps are the tiebreaker for who wins the job.
Well, that and Hawley's just better.
That's probably the real reason.
I mean, he's just better. He's just quicker. He makes better calls. I mean, Matt Ryan trusts him a little bit more. Well, a lot bit more. And that means a lot. When you've got the same trust in Joe Hawley that you used to have in Todd McClure, I think you're going to see a huge upswing in Hawley's play this year, especially now that his right guard's competent. Because we all know Garrett Reynolds was not.
Yeah, that helps. I should also note the guys that you said won't be making the roster, or probably won't be making the roster: Harlan Gunn, Taron Jones, James Stone, and Adam Raplogo. Sorry for butchering your name. All of those guys are eligible for the practice squad. So just because they may not make the 9 or 10-man roster does not mean they won't stick around for the Falcons, especially if they have good camps. And you can keep them for next year and hope that they compete for a job next year if they spend the year in the practice squad.
Well, Gunn's not eligible.
I think he is, because he's only spent 1 year on the practice squad and he only had 3 games on the active roster. It's like 9 games or something like that.
Okay. Because he's a very good player when he gets a shot, but he's not like a star. Have to put him on the field, have to put him on the... It doesn't work. So...
All right. So, Scott, people have been talking a little bit about Brandon Flowers since we last did this show. And we've heard reports since Flowers got released last week, saying that the Falcons are very interested. Monitoring, I think is the word. They've supposedly been looking at him for months now, wondering if he was going to get cut. Then our good friend, D. Orlando Ledbetter, came out with a report today saying the Falcons were not, I guess, actively pursuing Brandon Flowers. So he wasn't in their immediate plans or something like that. So what are your thoughts on that, and do the Falcons need to get Brandon Flowers?
I love D-Led, but I think he's wrong on this one. I do think that they're interested. I don't think that they're interested in signing him right away. I don't think they're interested in giving him the money he's asking for. So I think they're using it as a bit of a negotiating ploy.
That's fair. When news first broke that he was getting cut, it was like, yeah, I do think the Falcons will be interested in him. But Brandon Flowers is, 28, 29. He had a $50 million deal signed by the Chiefs like a year or two ago. He's not going to sign for some team for like a 1 year, $1 million contract. He's going to try to get as much money as possible. And so I've never been of the mindset, the Falcons are definitely going to get him, because at the end of the day, money talks. And he'll probably, the reports are that 10 teams have, reached out to him The Falcons being among those 10. And probably, in all likelihood, whoever of those 10 teams willing to fork up the most cash is going to get Brandon Flowers. And whether the Falcons are that team, who knows, because we all know that they have a lot invested in Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford. Not as much invested in their other corners. So it's really a matter of if they're going to pay Brandon Flowers what he wants, which I'm sure is like $30 or $40 million. I don't know if he's going to get that, but I'm sure that's what he wants. That's basically saying if we're going to pay a guy that much, he's going to be a starter, for the foreseeable future. And I don't think the Falcons are prepared to make a decision. And I think D-Led's right in a sense of saying that there are no immediate plans until Flowers' negotiating stance comes down. But it's not to say that it won't be a marriage that happens a little closer to training camp if some of that, if his, his leverage, loses a little bit of leverage in sort of contract negotiations between now and then.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best way to put it. It's leverage. If he really wants to end up with the Falcons, he'll take a little bit. Otherwise, he's probably not doing anything. He's just going to be with another team because I don't see Atlanta bringing him in for that much.
Yeah.
I think if they bring him in, it's going to be 3 years, maybe $9 million at most. That's what he's worth.
Okay. I'm making more of what we gave Asante. What was that, like 3 years, $18 million?
Yeah, but most of it was in the third year. Like 7 of it was in the third year.
Okay.
So.
Speaking of free agents, another player that I think both of us like, I know I like him, I can't speak for you, Scott, but he got cut today by the name of T.J. Yates, quarterback, Houston, Texas, formerly of the University of North Carolina, my current employer. Thoughts on the Falcons getting T.J. Yates, Scott?
Go for it. Do it. Why is he not already signed?
Well, all right. Here's the scuttlebutt I've heard on that. Okay, the move won't be official till tomorrow. It'll be on waivers on Thursday, because the Falcons were so terrible last year. They have a high waiver claim. So basically, unless the Jaguars, Redskins, Texans, well, not the Texans, obviously, the Raiders or the Browns claim him, the Falcons are basically going to get him if they put a claim on him. So
wait, so hold on, Jaguars?
Yeah, whoever the teams that had worse records than us last year.
Raiders. It goes draft order.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
it's basically we're fighting against 4 teams because Houston's not going to put a claim on him.
So it's Washington, Jacksonville. Who had the 4th pick this year?
Cleveland, right?
Cleveland. That's right, Cleveland. All right, so let's look at the backup quarterback situations. Kirk Cousins and Colt McCoy. He ain't getting picked up by Washington.
Okay.
Backup situation in Jacksonville. Blake Bortles and Ricky Stanzi. Blake Bortles is their number 3 overall pick. They're not bringing in T.J. Yates.
Okay.
Johnny Manziel, Tyler Thigpen, Connor Shaw. They're not bringing in T.J. Yates. That's the Browns. Oakland Raiders. Matt Schaub and Derek Carr, Matt McGloin, Trent Edwards. They might bring in T.J. Yates, but I doubt it. I think it's safe to say if Atlanta wants him, they just have to submit a waiver claim on him.
Yeah. And the Falcons did show considerable interest in T.J. Yates. What was it, 3 years ago when he came out, 2011?
They
he
did
was at the local pro day. They did bring him in, I think, for a private workout, or maybe they worked him out on the campus. I can't remember. But I do remember he was one of the quarterbacks that they were potentially targeting at the end of the draft. And I think, was it at the same year we ended up signing? No, I guess it wasn't. But anyway, so I think, you and I, Scott, have been talking about the backup quarterback situation on the show and how we are not very excited about it, to put it mildly. We talked about Josh Freeman. We talked about David Carr. I'm sure any other quarterback that becomes available, between now and training camp, we will talk about them as a possible Falcon. because I know I don't have a lot of faith in Dominique Davis, Sean Renfree, or Jeff Matthews being able to step in today, this season, and being able to win a game in the event that Matt Ryan is hurt. Now, TJ Yates isn't exactly, he's not Tom Brady, but he's got NFL experience. He's played in a playoff game. He started games, did a decent job managing a football game with the Texans 2 years ago when Matt Schaub got hurt. I have a little bit more confidence in TJ Yates than I do in any of the current backup quarterbacks the Falcons have. I liked him coming out of UNC. Thought he faced a lot of adversity over the course of his career there. Was not well liked by the fan base. They constantly booed him. They constantly harassed him because, face it, he was terrible the first 2 or 3 years he played for UNC. But he really turned it around his senior year. They had a whole lot of suspensions, showed a lot of leadership, a lot of character, a lot of poise. Really kind of put it all together that year. Had a good, solid season. Ended up getting drafted. Thought he's had a decent time in Houston, but obviously he's not in Bill O'Brien's plans for the future. So I think he could be in the Falcons' plan for the future. Your thoughts?
I think they'd be stupid not to bring him in. I think financially they'd be stupid not to bring him in. His total cap hit this year, if they claim him on waivers, is $645,000.
Yeah.
Also known as the minimum they would have to pay him if they signed him after he cleared waivers. If you want the guy, put a waiver claim on him. He's worth $645,000. I'd rather pay TJ Yates $645,000 than pay Sean Renfree $500,000. $145,000, you got a guy who you know is going to be decent. No questions asked. For the money, it's more than worth it. All right, let's see. We got anybody else on here? Oh, yes, Vilma, Dobbins, and Burnett. Anything else on that?
Well, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Jonathan Vilma at this point. If we could have signed him 4 years ago, I've been all for it. But now it's like, no. I mean, I don't see what, the report was that the Falcons are looking hard at Jonathan Vilma and not interested in London Fletcher. And I know London Fletcher has nothing left in the tank, but if you're looking for a leader that has nothing left in the tank, why are you looking at Jonathan Vilma and not London Fletcher? That doesn't make any sense, especially since London Fletcher has been a 3-4 inside linebacker for pretty much his entire career. Vilma left New York. One of the reasons why he left New York because he didn't want to play the 3-4. So, I don't get that. But, if we sign a guy like Dobbins, he'll basically be what Akeem Dent is now, special teams guy, backup, has experience playing with Nolan. If you're in a pinch, Dobbins has shown over his career in Houston and Miami and San Diego that he can play in a pinch. If you have to start him for more than like 2 or 3 games, then your defense is going to suffer. But, that's basically all he'll be asked to do if in the event that either Warlow or Bartu get hurt and, one of the rookies isn't ready to step up, like Shimbo. So that's, I'd be for that. And Kevin Burnett, he's been a stopgap guy for pretty much everybody. He played 12 teams. I don't know. Like Oakland, I guess, is the most recent team. But he's a pretty solid player. Why not? I'd take him over Vilma.
So the answer on all 3 is pretty much an emphatic no.
I'll do a maybe on Dobbins and Burnett. I'll say that. Maybe. If it means Akeem Dent goes bye-bye, I'm not going to lose any sleep.
I'd rather just bring back Steven Nicholas, man.
That's a fair point. I'd probably go with that over any of those options.
I mean, I realize, to me, Steven Nicholas is a better, more athletic player at 32 than Akeem Dent is at 25.
That's fine.
And I do like I do like Dent as a special teamer, but that's not enough to keep a roster spot. That's really not. All right, mailbag.
All right.
We've got our good friend, Schmorgish Borgnine, because that's just a fun name to say. Any undrafted free agents standing out with a shot to make the roster a la Warlow or Bartu from last year? What are your thoughts on this one, Aaron?
I think I've said it before, but I don't think any of the undrafted free agents on defense got a shot at making the team. There's just too many good players on defense for any of them to make the roster. Offensively, I can't speak to who's standing out because I wasn't at minicamp like you, but Matthews has got a shot. Unless they bring in T.J. Yates, Jerome Smith's got a shot, I guess. Maybe. Pretty much everybody we've talked about the last couple of weeks. As you said, any of the wide receivers got a shot at beating out Darius Johnson in that 6th spot. And in either one of the tight ends, Peterson or Wozniak, has got a pretty decent shot since we pretty much have tight ends, and that's about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Any of the 6 wide receivers could be a dark horse to take that spot from Darius Johnson, and it would not shock me in any way. Any of those guys at tight end, either Wozniak or Pedersen, they could end up taking a spot, that 3rd spot from Schuler or Pasco. Would not shock me in any way. The guy who really stood out today out of all those guys was Reedy. Boldevine looked like Brian Finneran, good on special teams, just solid receiver. But the one who could really earn a spot is if they're forced to keep, say, 4 running backs and a fullback. They're going to keep Jerome Smith, I think, over Vaughn or... Sorry, I think it's 5 running backs because you got Freeman, Rogers, Jackson, and Antone. Then you get Jerome Smith.
Yeah.
So 5 running backs and a fullback. Then you lose Then you lose that 6th wide receiver. But that's whatever. I could also see them keeping 8. What is it? I could see them keeping 8 offensive linemen if they really trust Peter Collins can play center or both guards. Mike Johnson can be Swiss Army knife Mike Johnson.
Play all 5 spots now.
Play all 5 spots. And then Holmes can play left or right. Then I could see them going with the idea that maybe they can practice squad James Stone. Maybe they can practice squad. I don't know if Schrader even has the ability to practice squad because he started a couple games last year. I want to say no, but if he does have the ability to be practice squad, I could see them putting him on the practice squad. But I think he was on the roster all year last year, so I don't see that as a possibility.
Yeah, I think he's not eligible anymore, but I could be wrong.
But Schrader had some time at guard too, so that could be another one of those guys that he ends up eventually making it through. But I think if I had to pick one, it's Bernard Reedy. I think he makes a roster out of any of them. All right.
What's the next question?
Oh, Steve from Brooklyn. Any thoughts on signing Adrian Hamilton, who was cut by the Ravens? I remember him being an intriguing prospect once.
Adrian Hamilton, to fresh our viewers' memory, is he was an undrafted free agent with the Ravens at a Prairie View. I think he was in the 2012 or 2013 draft class. I can't remember which one.
He had a 7.063 cone time.
He broke Robert Mathis' sack record, I think, for the SWAC or whatever the conference Prairie View was in. I can't remember. But yeah, he had like 25 sacks or something his last year there. So obviously he can put some pressure on the quarterback. I don't know what it means that he got hurt last year. I think he had a wrist injury, spent the whole year on the Ravens IR. So, I guess there's some talk that maybe he's not fully recovered from that. I don't get how you would not be fully recovered from a wrist injury you had in August. But, whatever that situation is, who knows. But, is he worth a look in camp? Sure. Would he make the Falcons roster? Probably not. Not if Mabonga takes that next step. Not if Starr, not if Shimbo, not if any of the Falcons rookies play well, this summer. Is he going to make the team? No. But could he be a practice squad guy? Sure. Why not?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know if Hamilton's the guy, but yeah. Maybe. Sorry, Isosceles Kramer back again this week. Says maybe kind of a Debbie Downer question, but who's creating the most buzz that you see getting cut?
I'm gonna squeeze some lemon juice in your face, Scott, and say Bernard Reedy. Not to say that he won't make the practice squad, but I'm gonna say that Darius Johnson's gonna win that job. I think all the reps he got with the ones last year is gonna pay off for him if push comes to shove in training camp in the preseason. When beating cornerbacks deep really matters as opposed to mini camp. No, I'm a little jealous, obviously, because I didn't get to go. But yeah, that's what I'll say.
It's not really squirting any lemon juice in my face to say Reedy, because I think Reedy doesn't make the roster either.
Okay.
The guy who I think does make the roster instead of him, though, is Geraldo Boldovan. And if he does not make the roster, that would probably be the lemon juice right on my burn. No, I'd agree. Bernard Reedy. And that goes to another smorgasbord question of, what do you think of Reedy? Can he be number 5 wide receiver, displace dumpster fire Douglas? The Falcons like Harry Douglas, whether you want him to or not. He was getting reps as the number 1 slot receiver all day. He was getting reps as the number 2 receiver most of the day when they were on 2 wide receiver sets. I don't see Harry Douglas getting cut. Period. End of story. He is an Atlanta Falcon until the end of his contract, whether you want him to be or not. He started fighting for the ball a little bit more in practice. I just hope it sticks. That's all I'm going to say. I like Harry Douglas. I think he brings a lot to the Falcons. I do think he has things he needs to work on, but trust me, there's a lot worse people out there than Harry Douglas. There's at least, 85, 90 receivers on NFL rosters right now that were on him last year. I'm saying, out of number 3 wide receivers, he's probably in the top 10. Which doesn't say a lot about number 3 wide receivers. But, yeah.
Tough for me to go there. But, I think Reedy, Darius Johnson, Tremaine Thompson, it doesn't really matter. No one's taking Harry Douglas' job. Look, if Harry Douglas has given the Falcons more than enough reasons to have someone else take his job, bring in somebody else to take his job, it ain't going to happen. So, the day Harry Douglas gets cut, whether it's this year, next year, or 12 years from now, I'll believe it when I see it. So he's going to be a Falcon for life as far as I'm concerned. So, you do.
There's nothing bad with that. In 3 years, 4 years, when Harry Douglas retires, he'll be out of the Falcons' hair, to the chagrin of some fans. I like him. What can you do? All right. Jeff Risden, our colleague over at Draft Lions, asks what the biggest current surprise on the depth chart is right now. Based on what I saw at minicamp today, I'd say the biggest surprise is that Goodman was seeing a lot of reps at right defensive end with the second team, mainly rotating with Jonathan Babbitt. And I thought it was a good fit, and he and Jonathan Massaquoi were having a lot of fun out there when it was the second-team defensive line and the first-team linebackers out there, he and Massaquoi were just playing off of each other. He'd eat a double, Massaquoi would loop around. Massaquoi would cut in, he'd loop around. There was a play where both of them cut in, and Parade Jerry looped around and somehow almost got a sack. I did not stutter. Parade Jerry almost got a sack.
It took me a while for that to register in my brain. Oh, okay.
To be fair, it was against the second-team offensive line, which was playing Lamar Holmes, Mike Johnson, and Peter Collins on the left side. Which, yeah. We should expect plays like that to happen with those guys. And then the final question from the Walker man. For me, 3 players I was most impressed with today. We've kind of been going over it all day. But, yeah, Bernard Reedy, I'd say for one. Jake Matthews didn't stand out at all, which is great. But I'd say Bernard Reedy, Dwight Lowery, and then Robert Alford, by far.
Okay.
So, that's all the questions for this week.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed another show. Hope you guys enjoyed looking at Scott's sunburn. Hopefully he gets that cleared up next week. But next week we'll be talking edge defenders. I can't remember what defensive tackles.
We're gonna go nose tackles and just defensive linemen in general, and then edge defenders and linebackers will group together.
Okay. So we'll do pretty much defensive linemen next week as our positional breakdown. As always, we'll be looking for your Falcons mailbag questions. You can send those to the show's Twitter account at FalconsPFC. Use the hashtag FalconsMailbag. It makes our life a little bit easier to peruse the thousands upon thousands of tweets that we get each and every day. I'm at FalcFans on Twitter. Scott's at Scott Karasik. And that's today's show.